Yo, yo, yo! Boys and girls, men, women, children, people of all kinds, whoever you are, everyone's welcome to it. Your boy Peter here, aka Peter Freakout 10, baby. Bringing you guys episode of Video Game Time, where the good games are always reviewed. Alright, back in our video game review. Now, on today's episode, we're continuing in a series that I actually started reviewing a few videos ago. And for those who don't know or haven't been keeping up with the channel, I kicked off the Resident Evil series with the original Resident Evil. A game that I think needs no introduction. I said all what needs to be said in that video. If you're a horror fan and you want to get into survival horror, Resident Evil is a great gateway to do that and to see what the genre was born from. And because of that, survival horror games kept dropping and dropping like rain with Silent Hill and Dino Crisis. But even with those, a sequel was inevitable. And that happened with Resident Evil 2. Oh, I'm sorry.
Resident Evil 2.
But how does it stack up to the first? Well, there's only one way to find out. Grab your health sprays, your skimpy outfits, if you're a woman and look like Claire, and whatever key you can find, it'll help you in the long run, and let's talk Resident Evil 2. Now, Resident Evil 2, this was a game made in the year 1998, so 2 years after the first one, and it was developed by Capcom, who need no introduction, being I went into great lengths who they were in my first review. And this was made for the PlayStation, which as you guys can see is what I played it on, and got the 2 discs here to prove it, which I'll get into when we talk about the gameplay. And it was later released for the PC, the Nintendo 64, and it's getting a Dreamcast version. Now, Resident Evil 2's development is quite the story. Resident Evil 2's development is a tale that really is surprising when you look at the final reception that the game came to be, because if any other game went through this sort of development, it would be ruined upon release. And it really shows miracles do happen, because when Resident Evil came out, it was a massive success that took everybody by surprise, Capcom especially. Seeing the success of that game, it was decided that they would get a sequel going, and a lot of people who worked on the first one were brought back to helm the sequel. But they also came in with a few newer people, including a new creative director, which would be given to Hideki Kamiya. Now, Shinji Mikami, who had worked on the first as a creative director, stood by as a producer this time. And the game itself was awarded a budget of over $1 million, a much higher budget than that of the first. And what a lot of people don't seem to realize, or some who have read into the development of Resident Evil 2, is that there was an original version of this game that was actually shown at E3 of 97. And basically what it would be is you would still have the Leon S. Kennedy character as he remained unscathed, but this time you would have a girl named Elsa Walker who was basically a biker who was on vacation, and she would be going through Raccoon City and would get drawn into this mess. And pretty much this is because after the first, the virus spread into the city and the police station looked a lot different. The characters that became in this game actually had different roles than what they had, and there would be a lot more emphasis on showing particular graphical enhancements. In particular, you would see like the characters like become more and more destroyed or damaged or hurt as you go through the game, which is scaled back in this version, which I don't mind, but I'll get more into that later. But the main thing that they were shooting for with this game was it to feel a lot more realistic than that of the first. And they had gotten a good way into development with this game. However, trouble was brewing as Shinji Mikami and Hideki constantly were at each other's throats, with Shinji wanting the game to maintain more of the horror feel of the first one, and Hideki Kamiya wanting the game to be more faster paced and more Hollywoodized. Now, quick word of note, I want to correct this because I made this mistake when I started the intros to my Let's Play. It was Hideki and Shinji who were butting heads, with the person who I sent that video, Yoshiko Okamoto, was not butting heads with him. But he did play a role in what happens next and why the game is in the state that it's in, as pretty much Shinji saw what the development was coming to, as he didn't feel like it was in a state that it needed to be in. And also, Yoshiko saw the final story and did not like that, so he pretty much had the game scrapped and pretty much started over. This is why the game had to be delayed, and in the place of its original release was the Resident Evil Director's Cut, which they used to fill the void while fans waited for the sequel. With the restart in development and Shinji not happy with what the project was becoming, he withdrew from the project despite having a producing credit still. So they brought in another writer who worked the story into what it is now, and they also allowed the team to rework areas that had already been built graphically and gameplay wise into what they are now. And this was a plus, as it allowed them to excel beyond what they had already done. And as this was going on, in the midst of all this, the game was already announced at the V-Jump Festival in 1997, and the hype was huge for this game, let me tell you. Much in the same way Acclaim did with Turok 2, Capcom went out of their way to make sure that this sequel had an entrance. They were given a marketing budget of $5 million, and Capcom went all in with that budget. 2 versions of the soundtrack for an American release and the Japanese version of Resident Evil 2, aka Biohazard 2. Toys were in production by Toy Biz, magazine ads, and most importantly of all, a Japanese commercial for the game directed by the godfather of zombies, George A. Romero, who was in the running to direct the Resident Evil movie. They also came with a slip to this game to basically have a contest going about, right here, win a part in the Resident Evil 2 movie sweepstakes. But really hoping that's good. I'll give the movie a try soon. But the game was finally released in the start of 1998 on January 21st, and it was a huge hit for the company. Within its first week of release, it sold about 380,000 copies, which is the equivalent to generating over 19 million. And it beat out the performance set by games like Tomb Raider 2, Super Mario 64, and Final Fantasy VII. And it wasn't just in video games that this game was successful, but it also beat out the record grosses set by the biggest blockbusters in the movie industry at the time. And by March 2000, it sold over 4.96 million units. On top of that, the game also received critical acclaim from critics, with some even considering this to be not just one of the best sequels ever, but one of the best games ever made. On Metacritic, the highest rated version being the PlayStation version has an 89%, and the lowest being the PC version, despite having a good rating as well. Critics praised the game for feeling like it goes above and beyond what made the first game so good, noting the improved graphics, which they noted in the environment, and the game's cutscenes and character models. The gameplay was also praised for its tweaks from the first, which they felt made for a more worthwhile experience, and new additions like the zapping system. There were some criticisms though from people in particular who felt elements of the gameplay lacking, some new additions they weren't a fan of, include the puzzles, which I don't get, I'll talk about that later. But they were also still critical of the voice acting, which I don't understand. Nevertheless, the good outweighed the bad, and the game was a huge success for Capcom again, and cemented themselves as the pioneers of the survival horror genre, and was nominated and won various awards, and has gone on to become a fan-favorite Resident Evil game. And seeing the success, Capcom began to delve more into the series and greenlight more Resident Evil projects. Now, as I said in my review for the first Resident Evil. That was my first time playing it, so I went in blind. And after beating it, I was really pumped to get into 2. And I had heard how high on a pedestal that this game was being placed, and how it's considered by many to be one of the best games ever made, and how even when Resident Evil 3 Nemesis came out a year later, and how despite the critical reception for that game being great, so many people were quick to put this one above that one, despite the fan base that game has. So I'm not trying to take that away from people, but hearing all that made me excited to get into this game, especially when I heard that it fixes a lot of the quirks. And I had actually gotten this for Christmas a couple years ago, right when I was in the middle of playing Resident Evil 1, as I thought I was going to beat the first rather quickly. But because life got in the way, it took me over a year to beat this one. But nevertheless, I had heard from many fans and friends that this is the one where the series really gets kicked into high gear. And after playing it, yeah, I can see what they mean. And I'll say this. I love this fucking game. And honestly, I think it's probably, so far, the best game in the Resident Evil series. And I'll go a step further and say I feel this, along with Silent Hill, are 2 of the best survival horror games ever made. And this has become a game that I'm going to make a yearly playthrough because I loved it that much. And I feel this game is leaps and bounds better than the first. Every minute playing this game is a rush of adrenaline, action, horror, and I was so into the game that the controller was glued to my hands. That's how invested with this game I was. It is that great. I'll explain why later, though. But getting into the plot of this game, the plot is basically, it takes place 2 months after the events of the first game, and this time the game takes place in Raccoon City, a city close to the mountains where the first game took place. And you are placed in the role of either Leon S. Kennedy or Claire Redfield, the younger sister of Chris from the first game, with Leon being a newly recruited officer going through his first day on the job, and Claire backpacking through the city as she is searching for her brother who has gone missing since the events of the first game. The reason being is because Chris and Jill are still trying to figure out Umbrella and what they have planned next, and they are off to find the labs and destroy them. Well, fate ends up bringing both Claire and Leon together because we learn that a newly formed virus known as the G virus, created by the scientist, has broken out as a result of him trying to get rid of the evidence, as Umbrella is trying to get a hold of it as well. And basically, the chief of police in Raccoon City becomes aware of what is going on and how lethal the virus is and his connections to Umbrella, and pretty much he's trying to hide this information, but it ends up getting worse as the virus ends up spreading, and this is where Claire and Leon meet, and they both end up making their way to the police station where they split up and they're trying to find a way out of the area while dealing with the infected, all the while dealing with obstacles in their path, like Leon coming across this woman named Ada, the daughter of a scientist in the first game, as basically she's trying to figure out clues that tie her to her husband, and he starts to stand by her and defend her while also trying to figure out her intentions. All the while, you have Claire coming across this child named Sherry, who is the daughter of this woman named Annette, who her husband is the reason that this virus is going on. And basically, she's trying to get a hold of the vial that the virus is in, that unbeknownst to Sherry, she has in a locket. So, much like the first 2, basically Leon and Claire and Sherry and Ada need to find their way out of Raccoon City while also dealing with hordes of the infected. Will the 2 manage to make their escape from the city and never look back, or will they be the next choice on the menu at Zombie King? I feel like in a story sense, Resident Evil 2 not only builds upon everything that made the first game so great, but it also fixes a lot of the problems that I had with the first game. The first being the pacing in the story. As I feel, for as much as I like Shinji's work in the first one, I feel it was the right decision for Hideki to push a bit more action into the mix for this sequel. But with that said, I do feel the horror roots that Shinji committed to with the first game and made that so good are still intact here, much in the same way James Cameron accomplished balancing that with action in Aliens. I didn't feel there were as many moments in this game that felt like they went on too long or had moments that brought in characters like Rebecca from the first one that brought the game to a halt. And while some may say there's ways in this game that mirror those moments in the original, I think what makes it work here is the writing for characters like Ada and or Sherry that are a lot better, as it feels like the characters in those moments like them are more interesting and I feel are a bit more spread out as opposed to the first, where it felt like every damn minute Rebecca had to come in and there had to be a moment where the game stopped to have her run to get a damn vial to help Chris. I think it also helps because the puzzles in this game don't take as long to figure out, whereas in the first one, while they were good, you had to really figure out the puzzle with all the brain power you had in the moment. And it just felt like in those moments, it took more than a few moments to figure out how to solve it. Not the case here. The puzzles are a lot easier and they're a lot quicker to figure out, and when they're finished, the game quickly gets you back into the action. And also, I feel like the story does a great job continuing from the first. I like the fact that the game moves from the mansion into the city, sort of showing the effect of the virus from the first, and how you see that even the police are in cahoots with Umbrella and are aware of the effects of this virus and are once again hiding their work from the public as opposed to saving people, and are once again afraid of word getting out, and how Umbrella is trying to get another virus going. It really adds to the size and scope that makes the threat of this new virus huger now that it's in the city. Now, granted, they don't spend a lot of time out in the city. There's few moments scattered about, but what little glimpses you get do showcase how bad it has gotten, and those areas are handled fantastically. And on top of that, I think the game does a better job differentiating both Claire and Leon's levels with the zapping system, and how regardless of the choices you made playing as either character, it will continue into the character you continue there from. And both characters just feel like they have their own path that differs from the other, which I love. Because in the first, it just felt like you were playing the same thing over and over again. Whereas when you start the game as whoever you started as, it'll continue as that character. So they'll have their own cutscenes. The choices that you made in the first playthrough play through into the second one with the other characters. Like some choices you made there, like in the A section for a character's playthrough, will carry into the B section. And you can play those sections in what any order you want to play in. Say Claire A to Leon B, or Leon A to Claire B. So the replayability will be skyrocketed. And I also think this game does a better job with its characters. I mean, I liked Chris and Jill in the first one, but the side characters I did not like. Rebecca, I felt wasn't interesting, and there were moments with her where she shoved in her face. But this, I think it did a better job with its development of its characters. I like the side characters more. I like Ada, I like Sherry, and the moments they did come in, they felt like they came in naturally and didn't bring the game to an abrupt halt. And the main two I also love. I love Leon. I love the fact that the writers made the decision to not make him an action movie hero, but rather just an average, everyday Joe going through a normal day. Then the situation happens and he basically gets his survival instinct kicked in, and he's trying to survive and trying to get everyone else he can to survive. So he has morals, and regardless of people like Ada and what's revealed about her, he still wants to help her survive, as well as Annette. And considering the piece of shit Annette is, he still wants her to survive as well. Like when she gets knocked unconscious and he's checking her pulse. I like that sense of morality to him, and I like that human side to him. I felt it separated him from Chris and Jill in the first ones. I also like the Claire character. I like the fact that she's related to Chris from the first game, so there's that connection that carries over into this sequel, and I like the fact that she's basically trying to find her brother, who's continuing to work and try and stop Umbrella and what they've been doing, considering what he knows now. And she doesn't feel like a hindrance. She doesn't feel like the whole I can do this better than you can. She doesn't feel like she's basically making things worse for Leon. She actually has some sense in her. And I like the fact that they went with the Sherry character, a sort of unintentional nod to Aliens, with Claire being Ripley and Sherry being Newt. And I thought that was really wholesome. I thought those moments were wholesome, like when she's talking about how she looks to her as a sister and that she feels protected by her. I thought those moments were very sweet and definitely make you feel for Sherry. And also in those moments, I thought it was daring to have a kid right in the middle of this fiasco. And I gotta give Capcom that. And I think it plays into the fear that anybody can die at the hands of these zombies and nobody is off limits. So you really get invested in these characters and the horror as they battle through the environment. And the horror angle, I think, is great. If you thought the first game was scary, this makes the first look like Arthur. Okay, it's not as scary as, say, Silent Hill, but there are some genuinely terrifying moments. Like the reveal of the liquor, I thought was really cool. Like when you're walking into that room, looking around, and there's blood coming down from the ceiling, and you look up, there he is, and that tongue. It's really creepy. So the horror is achieved greatly with this game. And in the first, if you liked the whole idea of running around to basically find notes that tell you stuff about the characters and what was going on, this brings that back. And I really like that as well. I like that it plays into Brian Irons and his part and how he's getting hostile with some of the workers, or there's like one guy talking about how he's playing checkers or chess with this other guy and how he never shows up and how there's this rash on him. That I thought was really cool. And there is some other stuff to collect too there. It's not just the notes, but I'll talk about those later. But overall, the story is great in this game, and I feel it's the best written story of Resident Evil so far, and proves how you can do the bigger, better approach and do it right. Now, on a technical side, you could definitely tell with the experience the team had making the first and what they succeeded with, that they were looking to improve upon their work with the huge budget at their disposal. And by God, they succeeded. Graphically, this game is a huge leap over the first one. And I dare say, so far, it's probably the best looking survival horror game right next to Silent Hill. The environments are a lot more ambitious in their design than the first, and because of the updated technology, it not only allowed the team to get more creative with the environments, but also make it appear more lifelike in their design, and the attention to detail is definitely seen a lot more here than it was in the first. Whether it's the opening and you're in the city and all these zombies are coming after you from all angles as you're running through trying to get to the police station, you see all these cars piled up, all this graffiti around to emphasize the life that was once in this city. And little things also, like when you pass by a restaurant and the deck area that people usually sit outside with, there was a person there and you look close, he's got all these forks in his back. That I thought was insane. And even when you get to the police station, just because you're inside doesn't mean the madness ends. Because once you get into the police station, there's a sense of eeriness. Just the lobby when you enter, and each room you visit emphasizes that there was a sense of a massive disturbance that caused everyone to drop everything and run. Papers are scattered all over the floor. Doors and windows are boarded up. There is just a sense of mood and atmosphere and how it's designed that really makes it creepy. And even just little things like the character models and the animations are also improved over the first. The zombies in particular are so much better designed. They look a lot more human, with the arms looking like they have actual muscle and their movement looking a lot more lifelike. And once again, like the first, they really get creative with the infected. While enemies from the first make a return, you got the dogs, spiders, plants, moths, and crows. But you also have new enemies too, like the Licker, which is probably one of the best zombies in this game and probably one of my favorite designs. As I don't want to call him a zombie because he's not a zombie, but he's this test subject that his skin is missing and it's all the way down to the flesh and muscle, and it's so exposed that his brain is literally popped out of his head, and he crawls around on all fours, and he has this long razor sharp tongue. And there's also the G-type monster, which has like 5 different forms as you go through the game. Then of course there's Mr. X, also known as the Tyrant. And this is the best way to describe him. And credit goes to a friend of mine. I won't say his name on here because I don't know if he wants his name out there. But with the next one, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, we're introduced to Nemesis, who the team based off the T-1000 from Terminator 2 Judgment Day. If Nemesis is the T-1000, Mr. X is Arnold. That's the best way to describe him, as he's this huge hulking dude who drops from the sky. No matter how many times you shoot him, he keeps coming for you as he'll get back up. You'll see him busting through walls and doors, as not even a pool of lava will kill him. That is how indestructible this guy is. It's not just with the zombies there that are really a lot more creative in design than they were the first, but also the bosses are a lot cooler. As you will fight Mr. X a couple times, but I like the boss that's basically this huge crocodile in the sewer. That I thought was really cool. And they also updated the gore and how that was animated. Because in the first, for as good as it was, let's be honest, it was very basic. Here, though, it's a lot better. Because in the first, you just shoot an enemy, their hand will just appear missing. There's not much to it. Even for as advanced as it was for the time, games like Turok and Turok 2 Seeds of Evil, I felt did better with the animation in that area. This, though, goes the route as those games because the animation on the gore system is insane. This is a gory-ass game. If Silent Hill was too tame for you, I got an alternative. Because when you shoot an enemy in, say, the chest or the head, they'll explode. If you shoot an enemy in the torso will go flying, and sometimes you'll see it crawling around trying to attack you. There's also moments when the game will show you taking damage as you continue to lose health, and you'll find yourself limping, as that basically tells you how close you are to death. So the animations also show the health for your character. The sound is also great. Once again, the one thing that was great in the first that is just as good here is the sound they did for the zombies and creatures. They gave them a great sense of presence when they appear. And even the voice acting for the people just talking is much better than the first, as they felt like they were done in more than one take, which was a problem that hindered the first, and it's something people make a joke out of. Cutscenes have also seen a massive increase in quality as they got rid of the live action cutscenes. It actually animated the cutscenes and had FNB for them, as there's moments where there's in-game graphics used for the cutscenes like the first, as you'll see characters just talking and their in-game models. But there's also a lot more animated cutscenes too. And in those moments, they're really good looking and definitely have better character models. The animations on the characters are a lot better. And to accompany those moments is a great score that, like the first, contributes to the atmosphere and the mood and the moments that are supposed to be fast-paced. The score works there too, and it just shows that despite the bullshit of having to restart the entire game from scratch and cutting back on a few elements that, if they did, would be ahead of its time, especially with how much of a technical marvel some of those elements were that they incorporated. But that doesn't take away that the game still offers up enough to still be the technical marvel that it came to be. So graphically, I gotta give it to everybody involved in that department. Then, of course, you gotta talk about the gameplay, where if you played the first Resident Evil, it plays a lot like this game. Basically, in this game, you take control of either Claire or Leon as you have them fight their way through the station to Umbrella's lab under the ground as zombies are going crazy. And much like the first, both characters have their own selections of weapons, with both characters having their own pistols and knife. They also get a rocket launcher, a machine gun, and like the first, Leon and Claire have their own weapons they can get, with Leon getting a shotgun, a flamethrower, a magnum. On Claire's side, though, she gets a grenade launcher, a bow gun, which is basically a bow and arrow gun that shoots bows at an enemy. But the newest addition to her roster is the Spark Shot, which is one of my favorite weapons in this game. It's basically this gun that you find that shocks its enemies. It's an awesome-ass weapon. Love the Spark Shot. And despite on paper, on the surface, it may seem like the same number of weapons as they were in the first one, there are some tiny additions that you can unlock that I'll touch upon later that give it a teensy bit of cinch over the number of weapons in the first game. And I also think it helps that they definitely do get a lot more creative with the weapons here, as not only as you'll find weapons, but you'll also find gun parts for the weapons. Like for Leon, if he finds weapon parts for his pistol, he can make a burst mode for his pistol, which shoots more than one bullet at an enemy. Also, the Magnum can get an upgrade. A shotgun can have its upgrade. And I like this because it really makes you want to try the weapons with those parts. And say you don't like a certain weapon, I think those parts will change your mind and make you feel like you like that particular weapon more. And I feel also they're a lot better in this game because the guns feel a lot better to use in this one than in the first one, as the controls feel like they received a massive overhaul, as despite still having the tank controls, the characters feel like they have a lot more weight on them as they move. The turning feels a lot faster. And when you shoot an enemy, it really feels like it's more on point in this game than in the first one. So the aiming feels a lot better. And it really makes just taking these enemies out a lot more satisfying and fun. And I also appreciate that in this game, it feels like the difficulty has felt a bit more balanced with both of the characters, whereas in the first, if you played as Chris, he represented the hard mode, but if you played as Jill, she was the more action easy mode, because she got more of the powerful weapons and could take down enemies a lot faster, whereas with Chris, basically his weapons, while powerful, weren't as powerful as Jill's selections, and it took more than one shot to take down an enemy, and his health drained a lot faster. And while you do have the fact that the characters have their own weapons in this playthrough, and you have to conserve your ammo, I don't know, I just felt here, it just felt just a lot easier to get through, and even when you shot an enemy, they didn't feel as bullet spongy when you shot them as either character. So it really makes characters like those two great to play as. And that also applies to the puzzles, which, yes, they are a lot more simplified this time, whereas in the first, you really had to put a lot of brain power into the puzzles, into figuring them out, really had to review the environment, as you were mostly left to your own devices. Here, though, the game will throw you a bone once in a while and will give you a clue on how to complete a task, and they're more simplified in the fact that they require you to do things that basically aren't as tedious as they were in the first. I mean, granted, there's some areas that mirror the first in the puzzle solving, and they're similar in technique, but they feel a lot easier this time. Like, there's this one in particular where you're down in the basement, you have to get the power back on through this generator, and you have to pull the dials in a particular pattern to keep the generator from overloading. And I think because, like, the dial is there and you can see it and go up and down, you can kind of understand what to do, and it's not as nauseating to figure out as the first one. I think it makes it easier because I did that puzzle the first time I played this in one go. And most of the other puzzles require fetch quests from you, like the Tide statue in the first one, where you basically had to put the diamond in the tiger's eyes. Here, though, there's a part where you have to get this one key, and there's these statues around that particular statue that has the key, and you have to put the statues facing the statue, and it'll drop the key. The most challenging part there is figuring out where those diamonds are, but they're definitely a lot easier here than in the first, especially with the fact that they're more reliant on fetch quests. But I like this more because it feels like it doesn't slow the game's pacing down, whereas in the first, because you had to put so much brain power into it, it really felt like the game was slowed down. And once again, the boss battles are back. They make a return in this game, much like the first. And while they aren't up to the level of, say, Soul Reaver, I still think they're much better here, as I do think there is some more ambition to them, like I mentioned. Like the alligator boss, I like the setup there, where you basically have to run through the area and push down these tanks that will go in his mouth, and when you shoot the tanks, his head will blow up. Or the Mr. X bosses, how he'll keep coming around. I like that there's this whole area to it where you can decide if you want to run away or take him on. And it is rewarding to take him on, as you'll find some more ammunition. That final boss, too, as both characters, when he keeps coming, he gets different forms, and they get a lot harder to take on. So make sure you have more ammo to help you. And it does have a lot of replay value, this game, as well, as they added back the finding info thing like the first that I mentioned earlier. But there's also a collectible you can find where, as you go through the game, basically you'll find film, like camera film, that when you develop it, it'll give you like insight as to what they were doing and more info on what was going on. So I like that aspect, because I like the collecting aspect of the first game. And much like the first, when you beat the game, you'll be graded on your performance and how long it took you to beat, and you'll be rewarded with a ranking, and a particular ranking will give you new weapons that you can play through the game with, like a minigun. And there's also 4 different endings you'll get depending on what route you went through as the characters and the number of times you played through. So once again, like I said, the replay value is still really high, and you'll find yourself coming back again and again. So yeah, the gameplay in this game, while those aspects are still here, like the tank controls, those refined aspects in this game make the game feel a lot easier to pick up and play than the first. And a lot of the elements that were problematic in the first one, not in the way you're thinking, but just in a way that I did not like, are much better improved here. And despite it being better than the first, it does have its problems, I will say. In particular, the placement of the camera sometimes. Like, say you're trying to shoot an enemy, the camera will place itself in a position like that you can't see the enemy, and you'll find yourself wasting ammo. Like, there was this one point when this door opened, and behind it was an enemy, and the camera placed itself on the side of the room, and you're unable to see if you're doing any damage to the enemy, and sometimes wasting your ammo. So I really think they could have placed the camera in much better places, and that could have helped you get better shots from the zombies. And there's some points also where the inventory system and backtracking can get annoying, because the game requires you to have this valve that you have to turn at specific areas. And it gets annoying because it counts as inventory for the game, and it'll start taking up space that you could use it for, like ammo and or weapons. So you can put it in this crate, which isn't a problem, but there's points when you need it, and you won't realize you need it because when you go through the level and you get to an area where you realize you need the valve, and you won't realize that you don't have it because you put it away for some much needed ammunition, and then you have to go a great distance back to the damn crate that carries it and get yourself the valve, and then you realize that, oh, my ammunition's taking up space, so have to put some ammunition back, use the valve, go back to the thing, and get the ammunition you need. It just got so annoying. And I wish they limited the valve, or if they wanted to use it, place the crates that you save your things in a bit closer so it doesn't make it an adventure to go back to the crate, as it gets tedious because of how much you need it and because of how far they are. And it also doesn't help that towards the end of the game, it doesn't have you discard the valve. So you have to go back and put the valve in the thing before you get to the end. And that gets so annoying because I don't have time for that. I want to forward the game, and because it takes so much space and because you'll need that space for your ammunition and weapons, it really becomes a hassle to have to go back and put that thing in before you continue to the end. So I really wish they kind of refined that a bit. But those are my only two flaws with the game. Because bottom line is, while it must have hurt to scratch the original version of Resident Evil 2, the Resident Evil 2 that we got still shows the ambition that the original version had. And like I said, it really has become, to me, I think, the best Resident Evil game and one of the best survival horror games, but also one of the best games on the PlayStation. It offers up so much fun, blood, gore, and action to the player that if they were a fan of the original Resident Evil, I guarantee you they will think that the original is Barney and Friends compared to this. That is how great this game is. It is one of those games that needs to be played to be believed. So, yes, I highly recommend you check out Resident Evil 2. So, when it comes down to it, the final rating for Resident Evil 2 is a 9.7 out of 10. And it deserves it. It therefore gets the Alexandra seal of approval. Again, definitely one to check out if you are into these sort of survival horror games, or if you like the first Resident Evil, this is quite the pickup for you. And because it's on almost everything now, N64, PlayStation, PC, shouldn't be much of a problem to play. So, yeah, definitely glad I got to experience this game. And it really makes me excited to see where they go with Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, which I have right here. So, even though I have friends who love this one, I've also heard some people who are quite mixed on it, but should be great. And also Resident Evil Code Veronica I will be playing. I'll start Let's Playing Nemesis soon, but I do want to start some games also that I picked up today. I'll show those, and I'll show it right now. Pokemon Snap, as I've been watching Pokemon with friends recently. But that's what's to come soon. And I'll be starting Resident Evil 3 Nemesis soon, as this is one that I've been dying to start, and you'll be seeing my thoughts on it. But yeah, and I did start filming my Scream 2 review. That'll be coming soon, so be on the lookout for that. And I'm also just saw Final Destination recently, so you'll be doing a review of that. And also, I just posted my Pitch Black review. For those who haven't seen that, go give it a watch. It'll be on the channel. But for right now, that's where we're going to end this video. I'll see you guys later. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of Resident Evil 2. Is this your favorite Resident Evil, or is Resident Evil 3 better? Because I've heard some people like Resident Evil 3 more. I'll know when I play it. But for right now, be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.